Hi, the onset of the winter is here in Delhi, but there is a lot of heat which is being generated by the new labor codes. People are a bit confused, some are seeking clarification. So, I have received a lot of questions from many professionals, from many students of labor laws and HR management, as well as from many overseas investors. So, I have taken 10 top questions and I will try to answer this in this video. Let's start this. So first things first, what are these new labor codes? See, there are four labor codes and the work on them had started long time ago in the Indian Parliament, and most of these codes were already prepared, already approved around 2020, 2019, 2020, but they have been notified right now on 21st of November. So first is the code on wages. Anything to do with wages is in code of wages. Second is industrial relations code. Anything which has something to do with the relations between workman and the management, or workman and his immediate supervisor, all of that is contained in the industrial relations code. Third is the occupational safety, health and working conditions code, or OSHWC code. So this talks about the safety and other issues. What is the ideal working condition, the working hours. And the fourth is social security code, which talks about ESI, provident fund and all these things. So these are the four labor codes, and we will discuss in the subsequent slides that what are the existing labor acts or labor laws which they have subsumed. Let's now come to question number 2. When exactly will these codes be implemented? Well, it works like this. Whenever the union government passes the law in the parliament and it receives a presidential assent, it becomes an act. So these four codes were passed by the parliament way back in 2019, 2020. Actually, three of them in 2020, one in 2019. Now what happens is, when an act is passed, under the act rules have to be framed. So act and rules, this is a difference between act and rules. Rules have to be framed. Now, labor is a concurrent subject, so rules have to be finalized or framed by all the state governments also in accordance with the four labor codes. So these codes were notified by Union government on 21st November 2025, and they will subsume 29 older codes. So when will they be implemented? Well, I can talk about Delhi. The state of Delhi has a lot of catching up to do. They have not started working on these codes, but two states, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh. As you know, Haryana, it has the industrial belt of Gurgaon and Faridabad, Sonipat, and Uttar Pradesh has Noida and Ghaziabad and Greater Noida. In Haryana and Uttar Pradesh, the state governments have almost finalized the rules, and I think these new codes will be implemented in Haryana and Uttar Pradesh, so Gurgaon, Noida, Ghaziabad, sooner than later. My own sense is that in 8 to 9 months time, or maximum 1 year's time, these codes will be implemented in the state of Haryana and Uttar Pradesh. Question number 3. Each of these codes, what are the existing acts which they will subsume? So let me answer this question. So the first is the code on wages. It will subsume the existing acts like Minimum Wages Act. What should be the minimum wage to a skilled worker, to an unskilled worker, stuff like that. Payment of Wages Act. When should wages be paid? Let's say by 7th of every month. Payment of Bonus Act. So who's eligible for a bonus? What should be the minimum quantum of bonus? Workman's Compensation Act. So if a worker is involved in a mishap and he is partially disabled, fully disabled, loses his life, what is the compensation to be paid? So all of this will be covered by the first code, which is Code on Wages 2019. Second is Industrial Relations Code. This will cover very important Industrial Disputes Act. So if there is a dispute, what is the mechanism for settling the dispute? Which is an appellate authority, which is the appeals authority, stuff like that. Trade Unions Act, which trade union will be recognized? What is the meaning of a trade union? How many people can form a trade union? How will trade union elections be held? So, okay. So third is Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act. So any organization which has more than 100 workers needs to have a standing order, or otherwise the model standing order of the state would apply. So Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act is a very important document. Uh, what constitutes rules, what constitutes discipline, what is the method for taking a disciplinary action, who can suspend an employee, who can terminate the employee, should there be an investigation before termination. All this stuff is covered under Industrial Employment Standing Order Act. So this will be covered now by Industrial Relations Code. The third code is 𝐂𝐨𝐝𝐿 code, and this will cover Factories Act. As you know, Factories Act is very important. So what defines a factory? So depending upon whether the factory uses power or it does not use power, so number of employees they will 10, 20 like that. A factory is any unit which works with power with certain number of employees, or works without power with certain number of employees. That is what constitutes a factory. Every factory must have a factory's license. So this is perhaps the most important license to obtain for anybody who wants to do any kind of manufacturing activity. Second is Contract Labor Act. Okay, how will the contract labor, actually it is called Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act. What constitutes contract labor? What is the liability of the principal employer? What is the liability of the intermediate employer? All these things will be covered by 𝐂𝐨𝐝𝐿 code. And the last but not the least is Social Security Act, which will subsume acts like Employees Provident Fund Act, ESI or the Employee State Insurance Act, Maternity Benefits Act. As you know, large number of women are joining the workforce now. So Maternity Benefit Act. What is the meaning of the Gratuity Act? So what is the meaning of gratuity? Okay, after how many years gratuity will be payable? How is gratuity calculated? All of this is covered under Gratuity Act. So this will be covered by Social Security Code. Compensation Act, Employees Compensation Act, everything will be covered by Social Security Code. So 29, 30 existing labor laws are covered in these 4 new codes. Question number 4, a very ticklish question, because labor is a concurrent subject. Concurrent subject means the union government as well as the state government can make laws in this area. Because it is a concurrent subject, who prevails if there is a conflict between the union government, the central government, and the state governments? Well, in case of concurrent list, ultimately the union government or the central law prevails, unless a state makes a different law and gets a presidential assent for it. But it is very difficult. It is like this. Let us say a state which is forced to make a certain change in the law which has in an act which has been sponsored by the central government, and it is able to win over the presidential assent, which in turn means getting the ministerial assent, because president is bound by the advice of the prime minister and his council of ministers. So it is very difficult for a state law to prevail over a union government law. And even if it prevails, the central government always has this upper hand that it can pass a bill that annuls the state act if it finds it in violation or in conflict with the central act. So largely the union government will prevail. But if the state government brings in some modification in the act which is seen as even more pro-labor or pro-industry, whatever, and if it is able to justify it, well, the union government will have no problem. But I think by and large, most state governments will toe the line of the union government, and this will make these laws these codes easy to implement, and this will give a boost to the productivity and also ensure labor welfare. This is my sense on this. Question number 4. Now questions are becoming interesting. Will the new codes allow a 12-hour per day shift? Will it become a reality? Well, for the uninformed, Gujarat, Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu already allow 12-hour shift. So a worker could come at 9 and leave at 9. But there have to be regular rest periods in between. So 12-hour per day shift is a reality under this code. It allows flexibility in daily working hours. However, there is a weekly cap of 48 hours in a week. 48 working hours in a week. This is mandatory. So you could see the 4 day per week working reality in India. So 4 days working and 3 days off. Okay, but states have to frame the rules. States have to frame the rules. And as I already said, Gujarat, Maharashtra, and Tamil Nadu, they already allow 12-hour per day shift. Now, what happens in case of overtime? Well, that I like to cover in the next slide. But you must know this, that officially the working hours cannot exceed 12 hours in a day as per the OSHWC code. You know, OSHWC code, it cannot exceed 12 hours in a day, and there is a weekly cap of 48 hours. Okay, so it is possibility, there is a possibility there will be 4 days of work and 3 days of rest. Question number 6. So if there is a cap of 48 hours, then there will be no overtime which will be allowed. No, 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 no. It appears confusing, but it is fairly simple. So any work beyond 8 hours a day or beyond 48 hours a week, it will attract overtime. Okay, overtime. Overtime will have to be paid at the rate of double the hourly wages. So let me explain to you like this. If there is a factory which is working for 6 days in a week, and in a day it is working 8 hours, so 48 hours in a week. So beyond 8 days, if some worker is working for 9 hours, for that 9th hour on that day, he will be paid double the hourly wages. Double. Okay. In case there are workers who are working 12-hour shift and they are working only for 4 days, 48 hours, if they have to work for a fifth day, they can work, but it is a consent. They have the management has to obtain a consent from the workers. They can't coerce somebody to do overtime, and workers can agree to do overtime, but even for that 5th day he will be paid double the wages. So it is not that it is anti-workers. In fact, the worker must agree to working overtime, and he must be paid double the wages. So anything beyond 48 hours per week will be considered overtime, and if a factory is working 8 hours for 6 days, anything beyond 8 hours will be considered considered overtime. Another thing which I want to tell you is, women staff also are encouraged to work at night under this code, occupational safety health, this code. Even women employees, till now women employees were not allowed to work during night shifts because of the safety risk, but now factories have to ensure, the state governments have to ensure that an atmosphere should be conducive and women should be given equal opportunity to work night shifts. This is very, very important, and they cannot be paid wages which are less than the male counterpart for the same job. Okay, so I think this is a wonderful feature of the new labor code. The very novel feature of these new labor codes is what is called the FTE, or fixed term employment. So it actually defines a fixed term employment as a form of employment where the worker is hired for a fixed duration under a written contract. Written contract is very important, but duration is fixed. So important thing is, even if a worker works for 1 year, he receives gratuity. As you know, gratuity under the Payment of Gratuities Act right now is paid to employees who have put in 5 years with a company. So now, if a worker or a manager or anybody is employed for a fixed term of, let us say, 1 year, he will be entitled for a gratuity. Normally, how is gratuity calculated? It is the last wages. Okay, and for each year 15 days of working, and a month is calculated as 26 working days. So I will explain this in the subsequent slides. So fixed term employment is very likely under the new code. So your people will not have to take recourse to third parties. They can enter into a fixed term employment of even less than 1 year. So suppose there is a garment manufacturer who has a need for increasing the number of employees during a season. It's a seasonal industry, so he can do a fixed term employment. This is allowed. This is a remarkable feature under this new code, which is industry friendly. And FTEs will be easier under the new codes. Automatic expiry of the contract will happen at the end of the contract, and uh, the organization does not have any liability of extending this. So this is what is meant by fixed term employment or FTE under the new code. If you ask me, this is a very significant step in improving the productivity and efficiency of an organization. Question number 8. How is labor protected under the new codes? Is it just pro industry? No, that's not true. Because the labor codes, the new labor codes, they ensure uniform minimum wages, enhanced social security coverage, stronger safety standards, and even it gives lot of strength to the gig workers. What is a gig worker? It defines a gig worker. It also defines a platform worker. For example, a gig person is a person who performs work or participates in a work arrangement and earns from such activities which is outside the traditional employer-employee relationship. Once again, a person who performs work or participate in work arrangement and earns remuneration in activities which are outside the ambit of traditional employer-employee relationship. And gig workers who work through an online platform are called the platform workers. So they earn per task. They are not salaried employees, and there is no employer-employee relationship with the platform or with the company in case of gig workers. For example, food delivery partners, ride-hailing drivers like Uber, Ola, Rapido, app-based service providers like Urban Clap or something. These are all platform workers, which is a subset of gig worker. This uh, it defines platform workers as a subset of gig workers, and gig workers are those who don't have a traditional employer-employee relationship. Now, what is good about these new codes is it tries to protect gig workers and platform workers. There a fund will be created wherein the contribution will have to made by the aggregators, which will be between 1% and 2% of their annual turnover. Okay, I think uh, rules will have to be framed for this, but important thing is all aggregators and gig workers must be registered on the online platform of the government of India. So I think these new labor codes, they go out of the way not only to protect the traditional workers in a structured format, but they even try to protect the gig workers and the platform workers. So this is very good. This is something which is very remarkable about the new labor codes. So what about things like productivity and efficiency? Will the productivity and efficiency improve? Yes. So first thing I want to say is that because of the 12-hour shift, uh, which will be possible now, it will help organizations, especially manufacturing organizations or organizations who have markets overseas and they are providing services to overseas organization. So this will help these organizations because they need long working hours due to long processes. So 12-hour shift will help. It will also help uh, the workmen if they work for 12 hours at their own will and they work for 4 days instead of 5 days in a week. This will give them a lot of time. So work life balance will improve. Second thing is fixed term contract. I think this is a major uh, winner. This is a major thing which has happened, which will turn the industry around. People will even hire top management professionals on fixed term because and companies will not shy away even for hiring expensive contract workers. For example, if for a particular project you need a design engineer, and but instead of hiring him full time, or instead of giving him a permanent employee, you can get into a 3-year contract with him or a 1-year contract. I think because of this, the third party employment may decrease. Third party employment, wherein you hire employees in your company but they are on the payroll of somebody else. Some complications will go away. For example, right now you need industrial you need standing orders for every organization which has a strength of 100. Now this has been raised to 300. Another thing which can help efficiency is people who are coming on a fixed term. They will get all the benefits of people who are there on a permanent employment. For example, gratuity will be calculated after 1 year, and it will be given if you complete 1 year. So gratuity is last drawn salary multiplied by 15 divided by 26. So if 26 are the working days, actually in gratuity you get half month salary for each completed year. So last drawn salary multiplied by 15, so 15 days divided by 26. So 26 are the working days in a month. This is what is expected, and you multiply it by number of years. So this is, so there will be no problem for the fixed term contracts or people who are into fixed term engagements. Somebody has asked me a question: is it possible now even to pay yearly gratuity to employees who are on a permanent uh, who are on a permanent employment? No. Gratuity we has to be paid at the end of the tenure. So if somebody is retiring at the age of 58, you will pay him gratuity at the age of 58 when he is retiring, because last drawn salary will be the base to calculate his gratuity. So you cannot get away by paying gratuity every year and thereby reduce your liability of gratuity. But overall the new codes will improve productivity, it will improve efficiency. If you see, in China it is what is called 12-6-72. Factories work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, 72 hours in a 72 hours in a week. Although we are not there, because we say that after 48 hours the overtime will apply, and overtime will be at double the wages. So it is here that workers also will remain motivated. Workers will also remain motivated because they will get twice the wages during the overtime. And companies also, they will become more efficient, because the same worker will be performing the job, worker who's trained, who has a sense of loyalty with the company. I think these new labor codes will improve productivity and efficiency. Also we must understand now, because there are 4 codes instead of those 29-30 codes, so number of compliances that you will need to do will become less. So I am sure the new labor codes will improve productivity and efficiency. So this last question number 10, is asked by a investor from abroad, and he asks that will it be easy to close down factories if the factories become unprofitable? Well, let me start by answering that no entrepreneur or no factory owner wants to close down an existing unit unless it is really unviable to run the factory. For example, in the textile sector, because of the um, international tariffs which have been imposed upon Indian exports, it has become unviable for some factories, and factories will close down eventually. But answering this question in terms of the new labor codes, yes. As of now, any factory which employed 100 workers in any of the preceding days in a year, they had to seek prior government approval for not only closing down factory but even for layoffs or retrenchment. Now this threshold has increased to 300 workers. So this will really help, you know, factories in MSME sector, which means micro, small and medium scale enterprises, to close down factories if the factories are unprofitable. So to that extent, it provides a relief to those factory owners who are just not able to lay off, retrench or close the factories because they are not getting approval from the government. However, I must qualify this by saying that no entrepreneur likes to close down factory, and in fact many people keep running their factories even if they have to run it on losses, because there is a certain prestige attached to it. There is a certain feeling of self pride attached to running a factory. So with these 10 questions, I think I have been able to clear the haze around the new labor codes, the new four labor codes. Thank you very much for going through this video.